Under the humid Miami evening, the stage lights inside the Fox News studio reflected off the glass skyline behind US President Donald Trump. Sitting across from the anchor, his tone was deliberate, his gaze steady, a leader addressing an uneasy nation after weeks of political paralysis. The conversation, broadcast nationwide, touched three sensitive nerves of America's current landscape: the economy, the government shutdown, and a newly elected socialist mayor in New York City. Trump began with the subject he knows best, the economy. With a familiar mix of confidence and showmanship, he declared that his administration's energy policies had brought fuel prices way down. We've done so much, energy is way down. Look at energy. We're going to have $2 gasoline. I did that, said Trump, leaning forward as if reminding the audience of a personal promise kept. His emphasis on gasoline prices was strategic, a tangible symbol of everyday affordability for millions of American families. He added, that brings everything else down. Groceries are way down, except for beef. Now beef is going to come down. We have to do that. It was a familiar populist pitch, the image of a strong leader bringing relief to household budgets through direct executive action. Yet behind the soundbite, economists remain divided. The administration's energy subsidies, while temporarily reducing prices, have also added pressure to an already strained federal budget amid a record 36-day government shutdown. The shutdown, the longest in American history, has frozen federal agencies, furloughed over 500,000 workers, and disrupted vital services. Critics blame Trump's refusal to compromise on spending priorities, while the White House insists the gridlock lies with Congress. Trump, during the interview, struck a tone of reluctant patience. Let's move forward. I'd like to move forward, but it's really up to them, he said, referring to congressional Democrats. If they say yes, it's done, because we've already voted almost unanimously to move forward. We're ready to do it. Those words carried both insistence and exasperation, a president projecting control while subtly shifting responsibility elsewhere. For viewers, the message was clear. The White House wanted progress, but Congress was the obstacle. Still, the political cost of the shutdown is mounting. Airport security lines have stretched for hours, small contractors have gone unpaid, and Wall Street has grown uneasy over the economic slowdown. Yet Trump's interview wasn't limited to domestic gridlock. He also turned his attention to New York City, where the election of Zohran Mamdani, a self-identified socialist, as mayor, has drawn national headlines. For Trump, the development was symbolic, a challenge to his vision of capitalism and American exceptionalism. With a dismissive shake of his head, he told Fox News, for 1,000 years, communism has not worked. Communism, or the concept of communism, has not worked. I tend to doubt it's going to work this time. The statement, though hyperbolic, carried political weight. Mamdani's election, an unprecedented event in US. Municipal politics has ignited debate about the country's ideological future. His platform of rent forgiveness, public energy ownership, and migrant inclusion policies has earned support among working-class communities, but triggered alarm among conservatives and business leaders. Trump's remarks tapped into that tension, drawing a clear ideological line between his administration's market-first philosophy and what he framed as a dangerous socialist experiment. Still, in a rare moment of restraint, Trump tempered his criticism with a note of conditional goodwill.
He has to show respect for Washington, because if he doesn't have a chance of succeeding. And I want to make
sure he succeeds. I want the city to succeed. I don't want him to succeed. I want the city to succeed, Trump said. It was a subtle balancing act, expressing hope for New York's prosperity while distancing himself from the new mayor's ideology. The phrasing revealed Trump's instinct for political nuance beneath his characteristic bravado, a willingness to separate civic outcomes from personal rivalries, at least in rhetoric. As the discussion turned to broader policy issues, Trump defended his administration's ongoing battle over tariffs and trade restrictions, a central feature of his economic strategy. The U.S. Supreme Court had recently agreed to review a landmark case challenging the president's authority to impose unilateral tariffs under national security grounds. The stakes, Trump warned, were historic. It would be devastating for our country if we lost that. Devastating. I think it's one of the most important cases, maybe the most, but certainly one of the most important cases in the history of our country, he said. The comment underscored how deeply Trump has tied his political identity to economic nationalism. From steel and aluminum duties to broader tariffs on Chinese and European goods, his policies have aimed to reassert American manufacturing strength, but at the cost of global friction. Economists caution that if the court limits presidential tariff powers, it could curb executive flexibility in trade crises. Yet for Trump, the issue is not merely legal, but ideological, a test of sovereignty, control, and the power to protect American jobs first. Throughout the 32-minute interview, Trump oscillated between confidence and combativeness, empathy and deflection. His language carried both the simplicity of campaign rhetoric and the urgency of governance. Each segment, the economy, the shutdown, New York's politics and the judiciary, blended into a larger narrative. America under siege by division, yet, in his view, still recoverable under strong leadership. The backdrop of Miami added symbolic resonance. The city, a cultural crossroads of Latin America and the EU, has long been a barometer of immigrant sentiment and small business resilience. Here, the president's emphasis on cheap fuel and job protection resonates deeply. Yet the backdrop also hints at contradiction. A leader celebrating low energy prices while federal workers line up at food banks due to the shutdown's effects. In Washington, the deadlock continues. Negotiations have stalled over budget allocations for defense and social spending, while federal contractors plead for relief. Meanwhile, Wall Street analysts estimate the 36-day halt has already shaved 0.5% of quarterly growth projections. The White House insists recovery will be swift once the impasse breaks, a promise that mirrors Trump's optimism about energy prices and urban renewal. Meanwhile, Zohran Mamdani's team in New York has yet to respond publicly to the president's remarks. Sources close to City Hall, however, suggest the new mayor views the confrontation as inevitable. Mamdani's inner circle has framed Trump's comments as proof of a national backlash against progressive change. Analysts say the exchange could harden ideological divides ahead of the 2026 midterms, turning local governance into a proxy battle over America's political soul. As the interview drew to a close, Trump leaned back, briefly breaking his composed posture. "We'll see what happens," he repeated, echoing his trademark phrase, a blend of uncertainty and confidence. It was both a warning and a reassurance that even amid chaos, he remained in control of the narrative. Outside the studio, the night air of Miami was heavy with humidity, street lights flickering off the ocean's surface. The government remained partially shuttered. Federal employees across the nation still waited for their paychecks. And in New York, a new mayor prepared to govern under the watchful eye of a president who both criticized and, in his own way, endorsed his success. In the end, the interview was less about policy and more about perception, a chance for Trump to reaffirm his political persona, combative, self-assured, and unrelenting in his conviction that he alone could steer America back to prosperity. Whether that message will resonate with voters as the next election season looms, or whether fatigue from the shutdown will erode his base, remains uncertain. But as Trump's closing line suggested, perhaps uncertainty itself is part of his strategy to keep both allies and adversaries guessing and to ensure that even in gridlock, all roads still lead back to him.